Welcome to Jumping Bomb Audio.
And welcome back to Jumping Bomb Audio, the show all about the wonderful world of Joshi Pro Wrestling. Happy November. I'm Taylor, and I am joined, as always, on this show by my co-host, Kelly. Kelly, how's it going?
It's going good. Right before we started doing this, I watched Mesa play Rock, Paper, Scissors with the Big Show.
Oh, that's fun. Have you been watching all of the, I don't even know what to call it, the exclusive Choco Pro interviews that have been happening backstage at AEW?
I have not been, but now I want to go back and watch all the... I didn't realize they were posting so much, because I've been just on Twitter less than normal, so I think I've just missed all of these until just now seeing the thing with Big Show. Sorry, Paul White. No more BS. Sorry.
Yeah, no more BS. Lulu did one with CM Punk like a week ago or maybe a couple days ago. I don't remember exactly when it was. That is very endearing. I won't give away what happens, but I ended up sending it to a lot of people and being like, you have to watch this. This is very wholesome content.
Fantastic.
So those have been good, but this episode we are going to review the big Stardom show from November 3rd, Kawasaki Super Wars, as well as previewing another big Stardom show in the Super Wars brand, Tokyo Super Wars, and also previewing the upcoming Tokyo Joshi Korakuen Hall show. But first, we are going to kick it off with some rather major news that I believe, Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, just broke today.
Yeah, I think it was overnight, if anything.
And that news is from Actwres Girls. And it turns out that Actwres Girls Beginning and Actwres Girls Colors will be no more. At the end of the year, they will be stopping. They put out a press release today, which I will read here. We would like to inform you about the future activities of Actwres Girls as follows. Actwres Girls will end their activities as a professional wrestling organization on December 31st this year. From 2022, we will shift to more entertaining performances using professional wrestling. As a result, both Beginning and Colors groups will be dissolved at the end of the year. In order to overcome the current situation, such as restrictions on customers due to Corona and the deterioration of profits, we will return to our starting point and will continue to work in our own direction. We will report on the future of each wrestler as soon as they are decided. We deeply apologize to all the fans for making such a sudden report, despite the support we have received during Corona. We would also like to express our deep gratitude to all the professional wrestling organizations and related parties who have helped us so far. So, big news. It sounds like from this announcement that obviously Beginning and Colors will be no more, but it appears, or at least from what I read from this announcement, that I believe Action Ring Girls, which is the more performance-based company, will be continuing on. They do have sort of quote-unquote pro wrestling in that, but it's definitely more of a sort of story, performance-driven organization. So very shocking news, Kelly. Really very shocking to learn, and although partially surprising that it really took this long, a year and a half into COVID. It looked like mostly all the Joshi companies had survived, but unfortunately, that is no longer the case.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that this is really the first one. To me, this kind of sounds a little bit like what's going on with Ring of Honor in the States, where it seems like they're scaling back majorly. So it sounds like, okay, they're not going to have contracted wrestlers anymore. They're still going to have some kind of roster and some kind of show, but there's a lot of unknowns right now. And so I think you're going to see a lot of people jumping ship because they probably don't know either. So I could see a lot of talent spreading out. I could also see them kind of cutting back because it's like, well, we're kind of just a feeding ground for other companies at this point, where it's just here comes Stardom taking people. So it I think it sounds like they'll still be around in some regard, but you need to cut back. You can't be running 3 brands in a time like this. So it's kind of like I can see why this happened.
Yeah, and it was so funny because I talked about them last week. We had that question that was submitted about the companies that have sort of exceeded expectations and those that have not really met expectations. And I talked about Actress Girls, who sort of felt like they were in a good position going into 2021 with a streaming service. Felt like they were building a pretty solid roster or rosters. And as I said last week, I think COVID certainly didn't help anyone. They've had some injuries to some pretty key wrestlers throughout the year that they have been missing. Obviously, as you just mentioned, the Stardom stuff, losing wrestlers, seemingly for a little while there at a pretty regular clip.
Yeah.
Wrestlers were leaving. So I think it's a lot of factors. I think it's always surprising when a company announces we're shutting down. It doesn't really happen all that much anymore. I'm trying to think of like what was the last major promotion to announce they were shutting down, and I can't even think of one.
Yeah, no, I can't either.
But shocking. But I would say once you really look at what's been going on, I mean, it wouldn't even be surprising, like I said, if one of these companies had shut down, just being like, hey, we got hit really hard by COVID. We weren't able to sell as much. We're not making as much money and we're shutting down. And obviously Actress Girls has had a bit more issues than that. So not entirely surprising. It will be interesting to see where some of these wrestlers end up, because now there is a lot of talent that will be looking for a place to go.
Selfishly, I hope a bunch go to Choco Pro, purely because their Joshi roster is kind of thin these days.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really know. I mean, maybe Stardom ends up taking in a few more because obviously they've had interest in the past, but you have some, wrestlers who already have some connections with other groups that they may end up there. Of course, some groups at this point, or most groups, could maybe get one person in, but it isn't like SEAdLINNNG's going to come out and say, oh, we've signed, 6 people
Yeah.
from Actress Girls, because they don't sign anyone really at this point. So it will be interesting to see. Sort of a bummer. I was hoping, as I think I probably said last week, that they could turn it around, because I really thought for a while that there was a period that I thought that they were really sort of a fun mix of in-ring wrestling and sort of this character, sort of in the way that I think Tokyo Joshi has become, and that Tokyo Joshi was very character based for a long time. It wasn't about the matches. And I think that they've hit sort of that good balance of having fun characters and also having a lot of talent in ring. And I thought that Actress Girls maybe could do that as well. But unfortunately, doesn't look like that will happen.
Yeah. Hopefully, whatever their new incarnation is going forward is, I don't know, is successful. But like, so what they do for the third brand is kind of like Makai, essentially.
Yeah, sort of in that vein.
Okay.
I think it might be slightly more. I've only watched sort of like clips of Makai. I've never seen like a full show.
Yeah.
So I think it may be similar in terms of that it is. I think they both sort of are like, we are a like performing troupe instead of being like, we are wrestlers. Like there's a lot about, because Action Ring has Arisa Hoshiki, who was in Stardom, and the whole thing was, she sort of came back, and people were like, "Oh my God, she's coming back to wrestling," and it was very clear that they were like, "No, she is not coming back to wrestling. This is like a performance sort of thing."
Okay.
So yeah, so we'll see, and maybe they can put emphasis on that brand, and maybe lift up that brand where it's sort of viable. And get some reach that maybe they couldn't do when they were focusing on all three brands at once.
Yeah, because really, this could just be a consolidation of resources, which smart.
So that is the big news. But the big show of the last 2 weeks was another big Stardom show, Stardom Kawasaki Super Wars at Todoroki Arena in front of 906 fans. Kelly, I think we talked last episode that based on the card, which, I still feel at this point that was sort of filled with a lot of matches that didn't really have outcomes in doubt. I think 906 is pretty good. We were talking
Yeah.
about maybe they'd hit 800. 906 is not hugely in the 900s, but I think for the card that they sort of put together, I think it's a solid number.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a good number for what the card was, for sure.
So before we dive in, of course, I'll ask Kelly, what did you think of this show as a whole?
Overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a pretty easy watch, which was nice. I watched it in 2 sittings purely because the first I started it at work and couldn't had to go do actual work. But then I watched the second half and it was a pretty breezy watch, I thought.
Yeah, I agree. I actually thought it was a pretty strong show. Maybe it was that my expectations were slightly lower because I went in thinking, okay, I sort of know the outcomes of most of these matches, and for I think about all of them, or most of them, I should say, it sort of turned out the way I thought it would turn out. But I thought that there were certain things that they did in each of these matches that I really enjoyed, and a lot of the things I've talked about, or maybe not a lot of things, but a few of the things I've talked about in terms of sort of match setup and things like that in the past, I think that they did a good job of the word's not correcting, but sort of the things where I was like, oh, I wish it was more like this. A lot of these matches were sort of more like that, and we'll get into that as we talk about all the matches. But I also thought it was a really solid show. So it kicked off the opening match, match 0, I believe, was Mei Sakurai defeating Waka Tsukiyama in 6 minutes and 23 seconds. Kelly, any thoughts on this opening match between two of the less experienced wrestlers on the Stardom roster?
I literally couldn't tell you a single thing about this match because the post-match kind of just wiped everything out of my brain with how bizarre it was. Whenever you
Yeah,
get like a weird monster showing up and hitting someone with a sledgehammer, it totally just anything you saw prior is gone.
yes, I would agree with that. I have to say, so the mask is called a Momo mask, and it was a weird thing where, like a couple years ago, maybe I'm thinking there was some meme or something with the mask, and I
Yes, it
remember,
was a
yeah,
sculpture, I believe, that someone made that turned into like a creepypasta with kids sending it around to each other and like, oh, if you don't send it to someone else, Momo's gonna kill you or whatever. And so then the mask got popular during like Halloween and stuff. So that's where that comes from.
yeah, because I remember seeing it a couple years ago, like a bunch.
Yeah.
and hating it because
Oh yeah, it's horrible.
it's incredibly horrible. And I was like, because I did not watch the show live, and I saw a tweet that was something like, Momo mask. Someone came out in a Momo mask. And of course, my first thought was, oh, a Momo Watanabe mask?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't make the connection back to that thing, probably because my brain was trying to protect me from recalling that horrible thing. And then, of course, I saw a picture because I don't remember who it was. Someone on the Stardom roster tweeted, like, who the heck is this? It might have been Mayu or something, who was like, what the hell is this? And I was like, oh, that Momo mask. Uh, yeah, it really did take over. Although I found it funny because Momo comes out, attacks both of them with a sledgehammer, and then just sort of walks to the back, and everyone's like, okay. And everyone just
Yeah.
sort of leaves. And I was like, what the hell? What the heck?
Like, it made me think, is it really like an angle, or was it just like a haha, Halloween was just now, here's a weird thing to happen?
I think it's a debut. I think.
Yeah, it
I
was
mean,
so
there's
weird. Because especially, like, I saw on the on one of the various Stardom social media things, it was either Twitter or Instagram, I don't remember. They were posting the match results with pictures. And the picture they posted was Mai getting her hand raised, and you see the Momo getting into the ring in the background, but there's zero acknowledgement that that ever happened.
yeah, and I don't know. I'm like, okay, who could it be?
Yeah.
It could be Sayakamatani coming back. Although then I was like watching the person like walk around, and I was like, who does this person walk like? As if I could like watch a person walk and be like, I know that walk.
And I
Unless
don't
it
think
was
they
like,
could see anything. Like, the
yeah, it
way they
was
were
just,
walking was
yeah.
weird. And like, my favorite part was when the person in the mask just kind of like bonked Waka in the boob with the hammer, like really softly, and Waka had to like sell it like she was dead.
But it was very much like, get in the ring, attack. Okay, it's over. Now I'm just gonna walk to the back.
Yeah, like
Um,
Meena was taking Waka to the back and laughing about it. Like, like no one sold it as there's this deranged maniac with a hammer attacking people.
but I guess, I mean, I think, Sayakamatani, although I was watching and going, it doesn't strike me really as Sayakamatani. And of course, Mirai Mayumi is the other sort of big name that sort of hangs over this all, where it's like, is she coming? Could this be? I mean, the other thing is, if it is a debut, it would sort of need to be someone who, like, if I were debuting Mirai Mayumi, I would not put her in a feud with like Waka Tsukiyama right off the bat.
No.
Like, I think she's probably above that level um, at this point, and definitely moving forward. So I'm like, uh, yeah, I guess I guess
Yeah,
we'll
it's
find out.
so weird. And like nothing has come of it since then. Like,
Yeah,
you
because
would
I was
think they'd
looking,
be
being like,
jumping people everywhere. Like, they'd be on every show attacking someone, or every couple of shows, or even like today was the finals, and that nothing happened there. So it's like, it's so weird.
yeah. Well, the first official match of the show, match one, the Future of Stardom title match, where Kelly's favorite, Ruaka, successfully defended her title, defeating Lady C in 4 minutes and 42 seconds. And of course, as with any Ruaka match, I have to start with Kelly's thoughts.
I said this was fine in my notes, and then I also said say something nice about Ruaka Challenge, and this time her splash looks better than Tamina's.
There you go. I thought Lady C looked pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, she's, and I've said this before, she's like in a weird position where I think she's better than a lot of sort of people in the lower half of these cards. And yet she feels very much like an afterthought, largely.
Mm-hmm.
like doesn't feel like, in a way that it's like Waka Tsukiyama is getting they're getting all these challenge series, and Mei Sakurai is getting one, and now Ruaka's the future of Stardom champion, and Unagi is challenging for the Wonder of Stardom title, and just feels like, and Lady C is like
Tall.
a body that we have that we can just put in a match if we need an extra person.
Yeah, they don't really do anything with her. It's honestly the best thing they've ever done with Lady C is in the match graphics, putting her with Waka Tsukiyama and showing the size difference between the two and making Lady C's head almost go out of the graphic.
But only 4 minutes and 42 seconds, so shorter actually than the preliminary match. So not all that much to talk about. The next match, another short match, only went 5 minutes and 44 seconds. It was a Goddesses of Stardom Tag League Block B match where the Oedo Tai team of Fukigen Death and Saki Kashima defeated Hanan and Rina, with the Oedo Tai team moving at that point to 4 points, Hanan and Rina no points. This match was, I think, largely fine.
Yeah.
I'm never really crazy about these matches where it's like, we're like, it happens in the G1 sometimes, and it happens in other tournaments, but it's like we're in the same group and we're gonna do, something weird in the match, but then all of a sudden, we can't get along and we're actually gonna now fight each other. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's sort of a played out thing to me, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, the only notes I have on it, it says it sure was a Wado Tai match.
Yes.
Whole lot of smoking and newspapers. So if you like that, you'll like this.
The next match, a three-way match with Meena Shirakawa defeating Micah and Sayakamatani in 7 minutes and 38 seconds. I thought this was a pretty fun match. I think, as I've said before, I'm a big fan of Meena. I think that she brings a sort of fun energy that not a lot of people on this roster really bring. I think that, as I've said before, Stardom really has an abundance of quote unquote cool wrestlers, um, wrestlers who come out and they're like, I'm very cool. I'm above this, blah, blah, blah. Meena is not above it. She's like doing her thing. She's doing that slide that she does or whatever it is. And it's just a lot of fun, and it's a fun change of pace. And I thought that this match was good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. The only negative thing I can say about it is it kind of just fell into the same trap that a lot of triple threats do, where it was, two people pair off, one person lays outside the ring for a while, but like that happens in almost every triple threat, so I can't really knock them for it. But yeah, I liked it a lot. I went 3.25 stars on it. Taylor, are you aware of the sexual tension between Micah and Meena Shirakawa?
I am not. No.
I was not aware of this until recently. A Facebook page I follow called, I think it's Stardom Without Context, was sharing exhibits in their case. And Micah sure is obsessed with Mina's chest. Just showing like press conferences of her just staring at Mina's cleavage. Another match where Micah had her in a camel clutch and was just smacking him around. Like there's something there.
Well, I do know when Meena first came in the company, that was almost entirely the sole focus of like her sole purpose, because she was like hanging out with Mayu, who would do the same thing, who was always talking about it, going on about it. And that was a period where I was like, boy, I hope this doesn't continue. Maybe it is continuing with Micah, but it seems like she's become slightly more quote unquote serious.
Yeah.
But I do remember when she first came in, it was all anyone in the company ever talked about.
Yeah, no, the video that I saw of her, they're just doing like a press conference and they're sitting next to each other, and Mina's like, I've just noticing Micah staring at her and like adjusting her shirt higher.
But this match also, I will say that I thought it was going to. It started out feeling a bit like a Tokyo Joshi
Yeah.
uh, three-way match would, in that there's always that running, and also like in DDT, there's that running joke that they do like a three-way match, and it turns into like two people wrestling each other, and the third person being like, "Hey, I want to get in on this," and it doesn't work because that's how this one started with Meena sort of being like, "I want to do it," and they were like, "No, we'll just wrestle each other." But then it got pretty much into the standard three-way stuff later, but that was sort of like, oh, there's a little bit of the Tokyo Joshi past leaking in here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I of the undercard, this was my favorite match. I really enjoyed it.
The next match, the Donna Del Mundo team of Himika and Natsupoi went to a time limit draw with the Stars team of Koguma and Mayu Iwatani. People will be surprised to hear that I did really enjoy this match. I went 3 3/4.
Wow.
But closer to the end of the match, I was thinking, this match is going too long, and I hope they wrap it up soon. And like 2 minutes later, they hit the time limit draw, and I was like, of course. Why didn't I recognize that was what was going to happen?
At first, when they hit the draw, I was like, okay, gives the 1 point each for tag league, and I was like, wait a minute, this isn't a tag league match. And then I was like, well, why did you book this match? If no one could win, there's why? You didn't have to do this. Like, I get putting everyone on the card, but it's like, come on, stop booking matches where no one can win or no one can lose. Like we were talking about it last time. Like, I do a scramble. Like, just pull a GCW, do a scramble, put Jimmy Lloyd in there, whatever you got to do to make it work. Just like you can pin someone that way. You could pin Koguma. It's no, because now she's doing a title challenge, so you couldn't pin Koguma. Why? Why do they do this?
And I said this before. I think I said this the last big show when there was a time limit draw. But my whole thing about time limit draws, which I've gone over and over again, as I said, people said, well, they're not happening on the big shows, which was true. And guess what? Now they're happening on almost every big show.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I'm like,
I thought it was a fine match, but I like why? You can just not book these wrestlers for this show and it's fine.
well, and I just think it's very hard to unravel. You sort of start doing the time limit draws and you're like, yeah, it's fine. It protects everyone. But then if you start doing that, if that becomes the policy, you then have to do that all the time. Like, you're never going to get to a point where you're like, okay, now we can start doing less. You'll only need more time limit draws as everyone ends up even with each other.
Yeah. And that's what we're getting, and that's why it's leached into the big shows.
And it sort of is a bummer because we'll talk about in a second. This was back to back with something else. And I will probably have people will find my opinion on the next match very surprising, which was the high speed title match between Starlight Kid and Momo Watanabe, which did not go to a time limit draw, but went to a double countout in 11 minutes and 50 seconds. I actually liked this finish. I thought it was good.
Me too.
But I think it would be, imagine how much better it would have been. Well, if you wouldn't have done a time limit draw in the very match before this one.
Yeah.
But also if you did not consistently have these sort of cop-out finishes.
Yeah. This one worked because it made narrative sense. Like, it made sense why, okay, this is clearly not the end of this story. You don't want to do a title change with this or have someone win. That's fine. It worked well in this because they had an excuse for doing the double countout because they just both lost their minds and just wanted to kill each other outside the ring. After, did Starlight Kid throw rice at Momo? Was that what happened there?
I thought it was like powder. I
That's
thought
what
it
I
was
thought
like
at first. You couldn't see any powder on Momo, so I wasn't sure.
well, it looked like when she threw it, it sort of like missed.
Oh,
And
okay.
then she ended up throwing the bag at her, which seemed more effective because it made like a great thump sound.
Yeah, I was not clear at all what happened there.
Yeah, because I was like, oh, she threw the powder, and then they cut to Momo, and I was like, oh, Momo looks fine.
Yeah. I really enjoyed after that when Momo was like, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to beat up all of Wado Tai. I'm not
Oh yeah,
dealing
that
with
they
any
came.
of this.
Yeah, they came over, and she was just like, yeah, leave me alone, and beat all of them up, and they're like, okay, we're out of here.
Yeah, that was
Um,
great. I would the one disappointing thing about the match was that Kid's mask is a little too well made, so it didn't
yeah.
rip. Like it kind of just like pulled a little bit, but she couldn't get a good rip in there. So that was a slight disappointment. But other than that, I thought it was a great angle. I like the match a lot. Even like up to the count out, the match was great. Momo's kicks looked brutal in this. Like I went 3.5. I can't wait for whatever comes next in this story.
Yeah, and there was the moment when Starlight Kid was on Momo's shoulders or something, and then she hopped off and she sort of stumbled, and I thought it was a stumble, but then Momo hit her like point on in the head with a kick, and I was like, oh, that looked really good.
Yeah.
Where Starlight Kid like reverses out of the move, stumbles, and gives Momo a second to kick her in the head.
Yeah, that was
Um,
awesome.
but yeah, I totally agree on the mask. Although it was funny because the mask, I think, if Starlight Kid had not touched it, would have still covered her face, but she was like covering it with her hand. Like I'm not sure if she could tell how much was ripped, but
Yeah,
I'm like,
probably
oh yeah,
not.
it didn't really rip.
Yeah, she
Um,
probably thought it was going to be like this huge hole in the mask and then got to the back and saw, okay.
it's not like you know, Pentagon,
Yeah.
whose mask seemingly turns to ribbons every time it's touched at all. It's like I have seen that man's face probably 25 times.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but yeah, so I was a bit higher than you. I went 4 stars. Uh, I really liked it. I thought it was very good. It certainly met my expectations. I thought the opening sequence was really fun too, with sort of the more high speed stuff as well. So a great match and a good kickoff to sort of the upper portion of this card. The next match, also a title match, and also for the 5-star Grand Prix briefcase, Shuri defeating Azumi in 13 minutes and 22 seconds. This is another match I thought was really good. I thought it was very well paced, didn't overstay its welcome, only 13 minutes and 22 seconds. But I thought it really had that I've talked about in the past, these sort of bigger Stardom matches that seemingly have the layout of like, I hit a big move on you, then we sort of lay around on the mat. Oh, we're so tired. Oh my God, we can barely stand. That for me really drag in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. I thought this didn't have this. I thought it was really not even fast paced is not the right word, but it was paced in a way that it didn't feel like there was much of that sort of waiting around downtime. And so I thought it was a really good match. I went 3.5. Um, sort of a good kickoff for the top 3 matches. Again, a match, as I talked about at the beginning of the show, little bit hurt by the fact that I really don't think anyone is beating Shuri for this briefcase or for her SWA title unless she sort of separates them. So the outcome wasn't really ever in doubt for me, which hurt it a little bit, but still thought the match was very good.
Yeah, I like this a lot. It was a really good, more technical match. And I thought it was a really strong looking win for Siri, especially coming off of the pretty not great match against Saki at the last big show. I went 3 3/4.
The semi-main event of the show for the Wonder of Stardom title, Cosmic Angels explode here as Tom Nakino defeating Unagi Sayaka in 21 minutes and 31 seconds. This is a match that I did enjoy. I went 4 stars. I enjoyed a lot of it. It sort of bordered into the area of that sort of big style match, which I've haven't loved. You know, a lot of the strike exchange stuff like that. But I thought Unagi looked great. My one major issue with the match is that it's another match that has now gone by, another title match for Tom, where she sort of comes out not looking strong. I mean, she did win, um, but the match sort of began looking like it was going to be sort of the story of like Tom is very clearly one step ahead, sort of in ring talent wise, in storyline, ahead of Unagi. And then it felt like closer to the end of the match that story sort of went away and it needed to be the story of like either one could win. So then Tom sort of comes out looking like, like she won, but not by like by the skin of her teeth, which now she defeated Utami. And since that, she has gone to a draw with Mayu and sort of survived Unagi Sayaka, who at the last show lost the Future of Stardom title to Ruaka.
Yeah, I thought she gave Unagi way too much in this match. And I mean, Unagi looked great, but you can't make her look great at a detriment to your champion.
It was like a match in a vacuum that I enjoyed, but then when you think about it, you're like not the match I would have. But this is the thing where like there's so many big shows. I mean, we're talking about this big show. We're going to preview another big show coming up. When we're talking about upcoming shows, it's like almost every show, almost every episode we do, we're in some way talking about a big Stardom show. And I think that this is sort of a symptom of that, which is that you need people at the top of the card to do these matches. Like this, I think would have been a really great match, like main eventing a Korakuen,
Yes.
where Tom can go out and beat her in like 14 minutes. Like go out, have a good match. The story of Tom is one step ahead, and it's a fun match. The outcome isn't really ever in doubt, but could probably have a good match. But instead, they need to build these cards up so much, and it's the semi-main on a big event, so you can't really do. It's the same thing with that Shirisaki match that we just talked about. It's like everyone needs to look some level of strong, but then no one can get to the next level of strong. Like Tom doesn't come out looking great out of this.
Yeah, no, and we sound down on it. I went 4 stars on it too. I thought the match was great. The 2 audible shoot headbutts were just sick. They were great. I'm shocked that neither of them were busted open from them. It did look like Tom kind of had a lump on her forehead. But yeah, like the match really clicked for me once Tom got mean and was just kind of over Unagi's shit and just started beating the hell out of her. It was great. Unagi looked great. She can hang with the top level of the card, which makes me very happy. But yeah, I don't know, it's not the booking I would like to see, but as a match on its own, I thought it was great.
Yeah, I'm the same thing, and I also agree about Unagi. You know, someone who a couple months ago, I talked on this podcast that there were still things where I'm like, she's not quite there yet. And, you know, I don't know if she's a top of the card person now, but certainly can hang with them and deliver a match like this in a big spot. So that is good to see, sort of throwing her in the deep end, especially after, you know, having the future Stardom title. You're not sort of wrestling the top tier people, so you know you don't really know, but she did very well. So I think we're just about in lockstep on this match.
Yeah.
And then the main event for the World of Stardom title, Utami Hayashita defeating Hazuki in 25 minutes and 24 seconds. This was another match I enjoyed. I went 4 stars. I think that when I talk about that sort of slow style of like big move, wait, I think Utami is often the most guilty of that sort of style in the company, which makes sense because she's often in the main event. She's defending what is, I think, currently by far the top title in the company. And I think that this match was really good because Hazuki is sort of a bridge between the current Stardom and sort of the previous generation, I'll call it. I don't know if that's the right word. That I think was a little bit more fast paced in the match style. And so I thought that Hazuki really kept the match going. There wasn't a lot of big downtime. There were a couple moments when they did, but Hazuki doing the the reverse. She had some great reversals in that match. She had the reversal into the Code Red, which I thought was really cool late in the match. And so I thought it was a really strong match. As I said, I went 4 stars. And I give that a lot, not to say Utami was bad, but I think a lot of that came down to Hazuki being able to sort of lead the match through and keep the downtime to a minimum.
Yeah, Hazuki looked great here. She was awesome. I went 4.25 on it. Overall, just the match rocked. The one spot that really stood out to me was the air raid crash on the apron that Utami hit on Hazuki, because that was scary. It looked like she spiked Hazuki right on her head. But you know what? This match really brought out in me. I found out who I hate more than Ruaka in this company.
Oh boy.
I hate the lead referee in Stardom. I think he's bad at his job. I think he's actively distracting. There was a couple times where Utami got a little too good at the 2.99 kickout, and dude was pulling up from his count before she kicked out. And I don't put that on Utami at all. I think that's just the ref being bad at his job and not calling it like a shoot when he thinks he should. I think he sucks. I think he's sucked for a long time. I hate whenever he just fucking jumps over the wrestlers when he's like checking in on them, looking like an asshole. Just hate him. I think he sucks. And this was every time, like there was a couple times in this match where he pulled up before and I was like, you fucking dick ruined this moment. And I probably focus on him more because I know I don't like him. So in the back of my mind, there's this little bit that fucking the cartoon of that sicko guy looking in the window and like, ha ha ha, yes, it's that guy in the back of my head waiting for this referee to do something stupid that I hate. So I'm just keeping an eye out for it. But still, I think he's bad at his job. I really, really don't like him.
Wow. All right. I'm just someone who doesn't really like. I feel like a lot of companies have sort of referees that are sometimes weirdly like controversial. Like I know a few weeks ago, like in AEW when they did the Danielson Eddie Kingston match, I think it was, and there was a whole debate, I think, on Twitter about like Bryce Remsburg or something.
I saw that. Yeah, if you don't think Bryce is a good ref, you're wrong. First off, if you think Bryce is a bad referee, you turn off this podcast right now. You don't deserve us.
But like it happens also like with Red Shoes in New Japan, and I always feel like I am never I'm never distracted by a referee unless something happens that is like visibly like, oh, you messed up the count.
Yeah.
As in like you counted 3 when it should not have been 3, or you did not count 3 when it should have been 3. Like that's really the only time. Like I don't mind. I guess I could see how, and I know exactly what you're talking about when you're like jumping over people to get the thing. Like I guess my brain just sees it as like, oh, it's part of being a referee, because there's also sort of referees in like the world of sports. Like I think about like basketball. There's a lot of like basketball referees that people like hate that have that sort of personality that's like, there's a foul called and they like run down the court and they're like, foul. And you're like, what the hell is this guy doing? But it's just like weirdly their style. So I'm like, oh, these referees are sort of like those sports referees, which are like for some reason weirdly demonstrative
Yeah.
in the way that they do it. So I guess, I don't know.
There
guess
was
I
one
got
part
used to it in other sports.
Another thing that I forgot to mention last show with this referee, it was during it was one of the matches on the last big Stardom show where like a wrestler bumped into him and he oversold it so much that he like flew back and like bumped into whatever girl was at the ringside and he pushed her down like in his selling. I was like, what the fuck are you doing? I hate him. I hate this man. I don't
Well,
even know his name.
that was our referee talk corner, and although it ended on a quite negative note, I think in general,
Great match.
Yeah, great match, and we were very positive on the show as a whole, which I'm sure will surprise some people who expect us. We are very fair with Stardom on this show, and
Yeah.
sometimes we don't like things, and sometimes we do like things.
Yeah. And sometimes
That's
we
the
don't
way.
like very specific people. Referee.
I'll say sometimes Kelly doesn't like very specific people.
That's true.
So that was the big Stardom show. Before we move on to recapping everything else that happened over the last week, Kelly has I don't know, what do I want to call it? I haven't thought of this before I started saying it. A
Excursion report.
An excursion report. There you go.
There we go.
Kick it off, Kelly.
Rina Yamashita came over to the States to work some GCW shows over the weekend, and I saw both of her matches. On GCW Evil Deeds, which happened on November 12th, she faced Charlie Evans in a singles match. It was a death match. And this match ruled. Like, they went out there and used a whole bunch of tubes, and they both worked really stiff. Charlie Evans impressed me here. I've never really seen her wrestle before, but I came away thinking very highly of her. Rena won the match with a splash mountain onto about like 20 tubes. It was a whole lot. The mat was covered in glass by the end of this. I thought it was awesome. I went 4.25 on it. Definitely go out of your way to see it. And then the next night, Rena participated in the Nick Gage Invitational 6. And she faced Atticus Kogar in the first round. Sadly, she lost, but had a really good showing. Once again, Rena and her opponent beat the hell out of each other in this match. Rena at one point took an air raid crash through like a tower of tubes that was up in the corner, and it just looked nasty. Like, it was a crazy spot. I went 3.75 on that match. Also good. Definitely worth checking out. The Net Gauge Invitational as a whole is a good show, worth checking out. I didn't watch all of Evil Deeds. I really only watched the Rena match. But good stuff. Definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, I haven't seen Charlie Evans or wrestle for quite a long time because she was in the Medusa Complex tag team that was tag champions in Sendai Girls. And I remember their reign. I always thought their matches mostly were fine. I was never really blown away. And then they left, and she sort of disappeared off the radar, except she's like very Twitter famous or something, right?
Yeah. Yeah, she's big on Twitter. I think I've seen her wrestle before, probably in a Sendai Girls tag match or something, but I didn't really. I remember like having seen her in a match, but I remembered nothing about the match. And like over the past year or so, she's like, I'm a deathmatch wrestler now, and pretty good at it. Pretty good.
Well, that's good to hear. I'll have to check that. I'll have to check that show out. Moving back to Japan and recapping the last 2 weeks, going back to Stardom, they had a bunch of shows for their tag league. We won't cover everything that happened there, although just today they had the tag league finals at Korakuen Hall, where Hazuki and Koguma defeated Momo Watanabe and Izumi in the finals to win that tournament. And receiving the Kelly, I don't know if you saw this, but they, as winners, didn't receive a trophy, but received some pretty cool looking rings.
Ooh,
um,
that's fun.
which are designed to, I believe, look like the Stardom tag titles. They each get one ring. But I thought that was sort of a cool, different thing. Usually they get, a little trophy for winning a tournament, but I thought that was cool. Also on that show, uh, speaking of the Starlight Kid Momo Watanabe, they are going to have a match. Now it was announced on this show on the December 18th big show. And the loser of that match will have to join the winner's unit. So if Momo wins, Starlight Kid will join Queen's Quest. And if Starlight Kid wins, Momo Watanabe will join Oedo Tai. So some pretty big stakes there. Would be interesting to see Momo in Oedo Tai. Would certainly help that group, get them a little bit more power. I don't know, oomph, something like that.
Momo just ripping newspapers out of people's hands and making them kick everybody.
And yeah. So we'll see where that leads. SEAdLINNG had a show on November 10th, which featured the second round of their tag tournament. 2 matches. Asuka and Makoto defeating Ayame Sasamura and Riko Kaiju, and Kaori Yoneyama and Yu defeating Arisa Nakajima and Hanako Nakamori. So those 2 teams will move on to the finals, which will be happening in the upcoming weeks. Tokyo Joshi had some shows, sort of smaller shows. On the November 13th show, Yuki Arai challenged Miyu Yamashita to a match that will happen in December. It will be a non-title match, but Yuki Arai looking to challenge herself against the top woman in Tokyo Joshi. Ice Ribbon, we talked about it last episode. They had a big show on November 13th. Turns out that is airing on Samurai TV on November 20th. So unfortunately, weren't able to recap it here, but looking forward to the airing. I'm still not spoiled, so we will not be talking about the results of that show on this one. But make sure you check that out on November 20th. Diana had one of their dojo shows today on November 14th. That went up on their YouTube as well. Wave had 2 shows. The 7th had 2 title matches, Saki and Hikari Shimizu retaining the Wave tag team titles over Sakura Hirota and Yuki Miyazaki, and Yumi Oka retaining her Queen Elizabeth title over Kaori Yoneyama and Leon, a 3-way match there. And then big news from Pure J. Although Arisa Nakajima and Hanako Nakamori were not able to move on in the SEAdLINNG tag team tournament, they won the Pure J Daily Sports tag team titles, winning them from Cherry and Leon. So that is everything that has happened in the last 2 weeks of Joshi. And coming up, we'll start with Stardom again. They have 2 shows on the 21st and 23rd. Those are sort of small house shows. One's at Eidion Osaka Arena 2. No title matches on that show, although on November 27th, Tokyo Super Wars will be happening. And the card is as follows. Kicking the show off will be a 3-way match for the Future of Stardom title, Ruaka versus Mei Sakurai versus Waka Tsukiyama. Kelly, do you think that the title changes hands in this match?
Possibly, but it could also be a DQ if a certain masked person makes their return here.
It very well could be.
And I mean, no one's seen Triple H since he had his heart attack.
I believe you mean his cardiac event.
Yes, sorry.
So we will see what happens there. Then Momo Watanabe and Azumi, coming off their defeat in the Tag League Finals, will take on Unagi, Sayaka, and Lady C. I would imagine with Momo having this big match with Starlight Kid coming up, I would imagine that she would probably take the W in this match.
Yeah. Is Lady C in Cosmic Angels? Because she's always tagging with them, it feels like, but like doesn't seem to have the branding.
I think that they talked about it, but I don't know if she is in the group officially. I feel like there was like discussion of it, but I don't know if I'm thinking of something else. But this to me very much feels like, oh, we just need two people to go up against Momo and Azumi so that they can win. Who do we have? Unagi and Lady C.
Yeah. And like, why? I don't know. Why wouldn't you switch the card around and put two of the lower tier Wado Tai people against Momo and Azumi, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that is very true. It would make sense for the story. Yeah, I don't really know. That's a good point.
We got to get Rossi on the phone.
Next is a 6-person match. Mayu Iwatani Hazuki, who is now officially in Stars, I should mention. And Hanan will take on Saki Kashima, Fukigen Death, and Arena. So this is, yes, I should have mentioned in the previous 2 weeks at one of the Tag League shows, Hazuki officially joining Stars. So that sort of solves that mystery. Some people, I think, thought that she might start her own unit. Obviously, she had been in Oedo Tai before she left, but will now be, at least for the time being, will be in Stars.
Yep, no Hazuki-gun.
Coming up next, an interesting match, a number 1 contender match for the Wonder of Stardom title, a 3-way match, Sayakamatani versus Natsupoi versus Himika. I like that they're doing this number 1 contender match. It was a little bit annoying is not the right word, but at Kawasaki Super Wars, it was just funny that every title match ended and then someone would just sort of wander out and it was like, I'm the next challenger, except for the main event where she called, Utami called Micah out. But I was like, wow, this is definitely a pattern. You win. Oh, here comes Koguma. Oh, here comes Meena Shirakawa. Okay, you're there. Oh, you want a title match? Okay. I'm always a big fan of making number 1 contenders. I think that's fun. It gives you more matches to do. It makes this match a little bit more, if they had just thrown this on and hadn't said it was a number 1 contenders match, probably would be a fun match, but now it's got a little bit extra juice because you got the number 1 contendership on the line.
Yeah, should be fun, especially with the dynamic with Natsupoi and Himika, being tag partners, but forced to go up against each other with Saya in the middle.
I'll be interested to see who comes out victorious. I think, as we talked about, I don't think Tom is in a particularly strong position. So I certainly could see, especially the fact that they're sort of building up this number 1 contender, I could see the winner of this maybe beating Tom for the title.
Yeah.
Certainly not out of the range of possibility. And like I said, I don't think Tom has been particularly strong. So I think that that's sort of one benefit is that she can lose a title. I think Utami's now in the position where, and also Suri's in the position where we're sort of waiting for that match. And every match before that point is sort of like burning time. But I don't think Tom's in that position, which I think is helpful to the top of these cards that sort of feel like, okay, we know what most of these results are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Next up is a high-speed title match, as I just mentioned, Koguma coming out at the end of Starlight Kid's match at Kawasaki Super Wars to challenge her, so it will be Starlight Kid versus Koguma. I think Koguma has really impressed me recently. I've really liked her, so this is another match, and of course I think Starlight Kid is excellent. Another match that I am looking forward to. I'm imagining that Starlight Kid will retain her title to keep her strong for the big match against Momo Watanabe.
Yeah, but I could also see her losing because the title, isn't necessarily a part of that feud. And I mean, I doubt they'd go this route, but you could even do an Momo distraction thing where she comes out to fight off Wado Tai and Starlight Kid gets distracted and Koguma rolls her up. You could do something like that. I wouldn't like that, but you know.
I wouldn't like it, but you could do it.
Yep.
It's possible. Yeah, I could. I mean, I could see that. I could see some way, and then you just sort of have a clean of, you know. I think probably the end of this feud, or at least the way that I'm looking at it, I think Starlight Kid probably beats Momo, and Momo joins. That seems a more logical story to me than Momo beating. Like, it feels like if Starlight Kid was going to go back, it would have happened during the whole thing with Mayu,
Yeah.
where it was like, I'm going to get you back. And then she won the 1 versus 5 match. And Starlight Kid's like, nope, I'm not going back. If she was going to then quickly turn back to be a babyface, it would have happened then and not now. So I think that's sort of the outcome. So I guess you could have her lose. You build it up. You say, oh, you cost me my title. And then Starlight Kid gets a big win to sort of get her, you know, position back,
Yeah.
not getting the title, but sort of like, okay, I lost my title, but I just beat Momo, who's a former champion, and all of these things.
Yeah, because Starlight Kid, I don't at this point doesn't gain anything from going back to Stars. And Momo could use a little bit of freshening up, and going to Wado Tai would do that probably.
The third match from the top is a reschedule of a match scheduled for a big show recently. Syuri versus Konami for the SWA title and the 5-star Grand Prix briefcase. We sort of already previewed this match because we previewed it last time it was scheduled, and then it was canceled, and it turned into Syuri versus Saki Kashima. So I guess I'll say what I said last time, which is I'm really looking forward to this match. Should be really good.
Yeah. Are they doing the UWF rules this time around, or no?
That I am not sure. I would think if they were going to do it originally, they might just bring it back because I would imagine that they probably, because the match was called off so late, I would imagine that they had maybe started talking about what they were going to do, and I would imagine that they would just shift that to this match.
Yeah.
Like they wouldn't have a particularly different match just because it's taking place a little bit later.
Because yeah, I mean, it's still going to be a good match, but I'd be disappointed if they don't do the UWF style because I think that'll be really cool, and especially with those two.
The semi-main event for the Wonder of Stardom title, Tom Nakino going up against another member of the Cosmic Angels, Meena Shirakawa, challenging her after Kawasaki Super Wars. This should be another good one. We talked about Unagi Sayaka sort of proving herself at the top of the card, and I think this is Meena's opportunity to do the same. As I've talked about, I think Meena has been a very good worker, and I think putting her in a big spot. I'm sure this match will be good. I don't know that Meena really has any or much of a shot to win this match. I think Tom probably retains, but this is one I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I'm excited for this. I like Meena a lot, but I'm excited to see if she'll step up to hang with the main event scene like Unagi did.
And then the main event for the World of Stardom title, Utami calling out Micah after her latest victory. So it will be Utami versus Micah for the World of Stardom title. I'm interested to see this one because I think it was, and I don't know if maybe I'm putting this in my head and I'm totally wrong, but I feel like the last Utami Micah match was the big match where I was like, this thing of like big move lay around is an issue.
I think it was.
I think it was the last Utami Micah match, and I'm hoping that that's not what happens this time. But we will see. I think that they both are sort of similarly styled wrestlers, which to me in Stardom, I think the matches I like most in Stardom are the ones that are sort of more one style against another style. You know, you think of like the more submission style of like Syuri, Konami, people like that. You know, sort of the harder hit, you know, the big match style, big moves of Utami, Tom, You have the Mayu sort of category where she's sort of all on her own. But I think this match can be really good. I just worry that it becomes that sort of long, like in 2 weeks, if the show's over and you were like, Utami and Micah went like 42 minutes, I would be like, I could see it. uh, you know, uh, it probably won't go that long, but I wouldn't be entirely surprised just because it feels like two wrestlers who wrestle that sort of drawn out style that I'm not crazy about. But we'll see.
Yeah, no, and this is a match where I think we're gonna see it a lot over the years, just because there's these two. They're linked. It's like Utami went to, what was it, Just Tap Out at the time when Micah was working there, and kind of almost gave Micah her big break into stardom through that match. So it's like I always see these two kind of linked in that way.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Micah is, it's so funny because Micah came in and it felt like it was like, wow, she's really, building momentum. She did good. She did well in her first 5-star Grand Prix. And it has sort of felt like that momentum has stalled out a bit. And, I'm a bit concerned now that sort of Utami's getting fed sort of like we have shows, but we're just sort of waiting for Utami Suri, which Utami mentioned at the end, or maybe it was Micah at the end of Kawasaki Super Wars, where it's like, I'm trying to get to Suri. Suri has a title. And I'm just worried about, someone like Micah just becoming, I think the last time she challenged for the title, it was sort of like, well, she's not going to win.
Yeah.
And it feels here like, oh, she's not going to win. And I'm always cautious about turning these wrestlers who had momentum into people who are just like, well, we need someone. We need someone in the spot. Who can we beat? Oh, we can beat Micah, sure. Because then the audience takes on that opinion, which is like, oh, it's Micah. She's going to lose.
Yeah, I could very much see Micah falling into almost the gatekeeper role over time.
So we will see. I think a bit of not a bit, but a much stronger card on paper to me than Kawasaki Super Wars was. But we will see what happens. And then Stardom has a show the very next day on November 28th, but obviously no card announced for that. I'm sure that will happen closer to the date. SEAdLINNNG has a show on November 26th. That has the finals of the tag tournament, Kaori Yoneyama and Yu against Asuka and Makoto. The only other match announced for that show is Hiroyo Matsumoto against Rika Kawahara. That should be a fun one. Oz has a couple shows coming up on the 21st and 28th. Nothing major on those shows. Tokyo Joshi has two smaller shows on November 19th and November 22nd before they return to Korakuen on November 25th for All Rise 21. And we will run that down quickly. The first two matches on the card, two singles matches. The first, Shoko Nakajima against Nodoka Tenma. The second one, Hyper Masao versus Yuki Kamifuku. Kelly, what are your thoughts on those two opening singles matches?
I can't talk. They should both be fun. It's cool to see singles matches opening the show. You don't normally get that.
Yeah, and two singles matches that, the winner could propel themselves maybe into contention for one of the singles titles.
Yeah, for sure.
The third match, the sort of classic Tokyo Joshi opening match, 6-person match, Yuki Aino, Raku, and Palm Harajuku versus Naokakuta, Haru Naneko, and Mahiro Kiryu. Kelly, not much to say about this match. As I said, just sort of the classic get some people on the card opening Tokyo Joshi match.
Yeah, pretty much.
Next match is a tag match, Marika Kobashi and Moka Miyamoto against Suzume and Arisu Endo. This match I'm really looking forward to. especially as I've talked about in the past, Moko Miyamoto has been sort of up and down. She's had some good matches, had some less good matches. I think if she has a good one here, that this could really be the surprise um, of the show to me.
Yeah. And I like seeing that Suzume and Endo are kind of just becoming a regular team now.
Yeah, well, Suzume losing her former tag partner from B-Star of Mirai Mayumi, so good to see that she uh, picked someone else up that she hasn't. I think sometimes when you're in a tag team and your partner leaves through no fault of your own, can hurt you in the company because then all of a sudden they're like, well, what do we do with this person? And I'm glad to see that Tokyo Joshi has kept Suzume, in this tag team in some featured, not main event matches, but featured matches because I think, as I've said before, she's super talented. And with or without Mirai Mayumi, I think she deserves some opportunities in this company because she could be very good in the future.
Yeah, totally.
Speaking of being very good in the future, another singles match, Rika Tatsumi against Yuki Arai. Another opportunity to see Yuki Arai's development in ring. And this is another one. I think Rika is a great opponent for her. And this is another one, not to sound like a broken record, and another one I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, no, that's a good match. I'm looking forward to that. And is this Arai getting another like challenge series? It really kind of feels like that. With the match
No,
against
I think,
Tatsumi and then against Yamashita coming up too.
yeah, I think this is just, with her uh, sort of connections. I think they want to keep her in featured matches like this. And I think she's going to get these opportunities because she is, or at least they believe that she is a, draw to bring a new crowd in, which I hope is what she's doing. But yeah, I think that she's just going to continue sort of getting these featured opportunities, which I don't mind because I think that she's been very good.
Yeah, no, she's definitely someone that you want in that featured role. And I kind of forget that she's like famous outside of wrestling because she's taken to it so well.
The semi-main event and the first of two title matches on the show, the champion Hikari Noa defending her international princess title against Miyu Watanabe. This is an interesting one. I'm not sure who I think leaves the match as champion. Kelly, what do you think?
Yeah, this could go either way. I don't know. I don't think Hikari's had the belt super long. I could be wrong because time is meaningless and everything flows together, but I don't know. I could also see Mew. Like it yeah, it's a coin toss. I could see it going either way.
It weirdly feels to me like Hikari Noa has not had the title quite long enough for me, but it also feels like Miyu sort of is at the place now
Yeah.
where she could win this title. So it's just sort of the conflicting thing of like, is it more important to keep Noah in that position to really establish her? Or is it like, okay, she got she's had the opportunity, she's defended the title a couple times. Like we can now use that even if she loses the title, and now we're gonna go with Miyu in this position, or I don't know what they're thinking. Um, I think at the last big Tokyo Joshi show, I thought Noah could lose it, and then she won, fairly definitively. So it will be interesting to see. I just don't know, like Miyu, if she loses again, it feels like she's getting a lot of challenges and not winning. Are you at the position where you're like, okay, now it's time to try with her? I don't know.
Okay. Well, I just looked it up on Cage Match. Barring Thunder Rosa's reign, which was long because of COVID. Hikari's had the longest reign of the title at 194 days.
How long was Yuki's reign?
178.
Oh, interesting. See, to me, it doesn't feel as long as hers.
No,
I
it
don't.
doesn't.
Hmm. Um. Yeah. So I guess. I mean, I don't think that. these titles should ever be like, okay, we're going to give them like 175 days of, the title. But I do wonder if they're like, okay, our goal with this title is you get the chance to establish yourself for a certain period of time. We'll give it to you for a notable period of time. You can get some defenses in, and then we'll trying someone else. Like, I don't know, just because this sort of system of, when the International Princess title was started, it didn't really feel like this sort of title where it was like, we're going to try sort of mid-card wrestlers, moving them up a little bit. Like you said, like Thunder Rosa had it. It felt, obviously, when COVID wasn't a thing, that you could bring in people from the States, from Europe, and do things like that. So there isn't a lot of history to say, okay, this is sort of what this title is, which makes it tricky to predict.
Yeah, because it's like your first reign was Natsumi Maki. She had it for 22 days. Yuna Monase had it for 33 days. Maki Ito had it for 78 days, and then it went to Thunder Rosa, who had it for 276 days, but she was never able to defend it because of COVID.
Yeah, so I'm like, what's my final? I'm going to say, just to be interesting, I'm going to say Miyu wins. Just, I'll say it.
Yeah, this is one where I'll definitely bite on near falls, because it's like, I have no idea which way this is going.
Yeah, and I think Miyu is a great, just speaking of the match, in ring stuff itself, I think Miyu has really been great in ring, and I think that this match might be probably the best match in ring wise of Noah's group of defenses.
Yeah, for sure.
Then the main event, once again, the Princess Tag Team titles main eventing a Korakuen Hall show. The Magical Sugar Rabbits, Yuka Sakazaki and Mizuki, the champions, defending against Miyu Yamashita and Maki Ito. 1-1 million. Getting another shot at the tag titles here against the new champions. To me, I think Magical Sugar Rabbits retain. I think that there's still probably more to this, especially now that Maki lost the big title match. I think that there's more to this Miyu Maki story that is going to happen. And to me, I guess I could see them winning, holding both the titles. But I just think that there's going to be eventually some sort of break there. And I think losing the titles probably helps to get to that point.
Yeah, I could see them losing here, and that's kind of the break between Maki and Miyu. And maybe Maki goes like full heel or something.
Yeah, because there was the whole thing right after the first show after Maki lost the title where she cut that promo where she was like, how are you standing in the ring and bragging about having won the title? Like, I think it's just a loss. And then maybe because they haven't announced anything for January 4th yet. They obviously probably wouldn't with this Korakuen show coming up, but maybe there's something that they lose the show, Maki attacks Miyu or something, and they set up a rematch for January 4th. I just don't know. Like, that would make sense to me, and I don't see anyone where I'm like, oh, yeah, Miyu has a challenger coming, and that challenger is someone. Like an obvious challenger on the horizon. Yuka and Mizuki have the tag title, so you can sort of keep them there for now. And it feels like a lot of these other people are sort of floating around the International Princess title level.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't be crazy to me to have them say, okay, we'll do Miyu Maki again at Korakuen Hall on January 4th. It's a match that you just ran, but now you've got a little bit extra sort of story to it, and you've got a little bit smaller of a venue where you don't have to pull in the same number again, so it might be okay running the same match again. Because I just don't think that this story is quite done, and I don't think winning the titles would just sort of extend the inevitable end point of this. So I'm like, just have them lose the title and just move into whatever that story is.
Yeah, I could see that. I also think there's a chance they might hold wait on the Miyumaki match until Sumo Hall in March.
Oh, that's another good idea. I'm just wondering, like, you just ran the match at your like big show of the year.
Yeah.
I just wonder if like running the same match again, and if you try and fill Sumo Hall, which is really big, that people will be like, wait, we just saw this. Where at Korakuen, which is a little bit smaller in size, not a tiny venue, but a little bit smaller, where you could sort of get away with being like, oh, it's a rematch, but now the rematch is like Maki is a heel.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe you don't draw as many, but you don't have to draw as many at, Korakuen, because I think they drew a good number in that big show. But we will see, but lots of intrigue. I would say lots of intrigue at the top of this card.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm really excited for this show.
Moving on, Sendai Girls has a pretty big 2 weeks coming up. They have a Korakuen Hall show on November 23rd with their yearly junior tournament, which includes people in Sendai Girls, but also outsiders Riko Kaiju, Madeline, Haruka Umasaki, Amy Miura, and some other people. That should be exciting. Also on that show, Dash Chizako and Mika Iwata against Saki Akai and Asuka. That should be a fun match. And then
That's
the main
a cool
event.
match.
Yeah, that is a cool match. And, I think Saki Akai and Asuka have teamed a few times in the past, not often. But that should be a really fun match. And then another tag match in the main event, this one for the tag titles, Andres Miyagi and Hibiki against Chihiro Hashimoto and Yu. So that should be good. And then 5 days later, they have the big show in Sendai, Mika Iwata against Andres Miyagi in a singles match, Dash Chizako and Hibiki going back at it again in another hardcore match. And then the main event, the big match, which has seemingly been sort of on the docket for about 2 years at this point, it feels like. Chihiro Hashimoto against Takumi Iroha for the Sendai title in the main event. That should be a super fun show.
Yeah, that card rocks.
Ice Ribbon has a bunch of shows coming up, but nothing is announced. They also have a Korakuen Hall show on November 28th, but I don't believe anything has been announced. Of course, I have been staying spoiler-free from the big show that they just had, so maybe something has been announced. So if I missed that, I apologize. But that is everything that is coming up in the next 2 weeks. Next episode, we will definitely be covering the Tokyo Joshi show, as well as the Stardom show. So 2 big shows coming up at the end of November. So Kelly, anything else you want to add before we wrap up this episode?
No, nothing this week. I hope
All
you
right,
all
well,
feel smarter after listening to this week.
yes, of course. Smarter and happier.
Yep.
Well, once again, I am Taylor, and for Kelly, thank you for joining us once again on Jumping Bomb Audio, and we will talk to you again in 2 weeks.